In the rarefied air of Manhattan's elite, love is often indistinguishable from a merger, and heartbreak is calculated in stock options. To the outside world, Malcolm Carroll and Scarlett were the golden couple of the tech industry, architects of a digital empire that spanned the globe. But beneath the polished veneer of galas and philanthropy lay a foundation rotting from neglect and betrayal. When the divorce filing hit the tabloids, it was war. Malcolm, armed with the best legal team money could buy, expected a quick annihilation of his wife's claims. He expected a broken woman. He didn't expect Scarlett to remember the one thing he had conveniently forgotten. This is a story about the price of ambition, the weight of a signature, and the devastating power of a woman who knows her own worth. The air in courtroom 4B was stagnant, recycled and thick with the scent of expensive cologne and suppressed desperation. It was a sterile theater for the dismantling of a life that had taken 20 years to build. Judge Philip Carter sat behind the mahogany bench, rubbing his temples. He had seen thousands of divorces, ranging from the tragic to the petty, but the dissolution of the Carroll versus Carroll marriage was testing the limits of his patience. The media circus outside was deafening, but inside the silence was heavy, punctuated only by the rustling of papers and the rhythmic tapping of a stylus against a tablet. On the right side of the aisle sat Malcolm Carroll. At 48, he looked every inch the titan of industry he was purported to be. His suit was bespoke Savile Row, charcoal grey, fitting his broad shoulders with architectural precision. He sat with a relaxed sprawl that bordered on insolence, whispering something amusing to his lead counsel. He exuded the confidence of a man who had already read the last page of the book and knew he won. On the left sat Scarlett Ingram. She was still using her maiden name on the legal documents, a small act of reclamation that seemed to annoy Malcolm more than the financial demands. She wore a cream-colored suit that was elegant but understated, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that highlighted the sharpness of her cheekbones. She didn't look at Malcolm. She didn't look at the gallery where Una Cole, the 20-something brand ambassador of Carroll Tech, and the catalyst for this proceeding, sat with a feigned expression of solemnity. "Mr. Quincy," Judge Carter said, his voice gravelly. He looked down at Scarlett's lawyer, Tucker Quincy. Tucker was a disheveled man compared to the slick sharks on Malcolm's team. He wore a rumpled suit and looked like he hadn't slept in a week, but his eyes were bright, intelligent, and currently focused on a stack of files that seemed precariously close to toppling over. "We have been litigating the division of assets for 6 months. Your client's claim to 50% of the unvested stock options and the intellectual property rights to the Ether algorithm has been noted. And frankly, without concrete documentation proving joint authorship, it is struggling to hold water." Malcolm's lawyer, a razor-sharp woman named Diane Sterling, stood up. "Your Honor, as we have demonstrated, Miss Ingram has not had an active role in Carroll Tech for 15 years. She has been a philanthropic figurehead. The Ether algorithm was developed solely by Mr. Carroll. The company is his premarital vision, executed during the marriage, yes, but through his sole genius. The settlement offer we placed on the table, $20 million and the Hamptons estate, is more than generous. It is charity." The word charity hung in the air like smoke. Scarlett's hand tightened around her pen, her knuckles turning white. Tucker Quincy stood slowly. "Your Honor, charity implies my client is a beggar, rather than the co-founder of the empire in question. We are not asking for charity. We are asking for equity." Judge Carter sighed, leaning back. "Mr. Quincy, the court operates on evidence, not sentiment. Mr. Carroll has provided patent filings, board minutes, and development logs, all bearing his name. You have provided anecdotes. Unless you have something new to present regarding the ownership structure, I am inclined to rule on the current motion for summary judgment today. I'm ready to sign the decree based on the existing premarital asset separation logic." Malcolm smirked. It was a small, tight expression of victory. He turned slightly, catching Una's eye in the gallery. She offered him a sympathetic, yet triumphant, flutter of lashes. Scarlett felt the heat rise in her chest. It wasn't the money. God, she didn't care about the yachts or the penthouses. It was the erasure. Malcolm was rewriting history, painting himself as the solitary god of their universe, reducing her to a decorative ornament he had picked up along the way. "We need a recess," Scarlett whispered to Tucker. "Scarlett, the judge is about to rule," Tucker hissed back. "If we don't drop the hammer now, we lose the momentum." "Is Underwood here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "He's 5 minutes out. Traffic on the FDR." Scarlett looked up at the judge. "Your Honor," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the murmurs of the courtroom. Judge Carter looked surprised that the wife was speaking directly to him. "Miss Ingram?" "I apologize for the interruption," Scarlett said, standing up. She smoothed her skirt, projecting a calm she did not feel. "But my counsel is awaiting a crucial piece of physical evidence that is currently in transit. We request a 15-minute recess." Diane Sterling laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Objection. Delay tactics. They've had 6 months to find evidence. This is a stall because they know they've lost." Malcolm leaned forward, speaking for the first time. His voice was a rich baritone, the voice that had charmed investors and senators alike. "Scarlett, don't embarrass yourself. Take the house. Take the money. Go be with Gemma. Let's end this with some dignity." The condescension was palpable. He was treating her like a child throwing a tantrum in a toy store. Scarlett turned to him. For the first time all morning, she looked him dead in the eye. The history between them, the nights sleeping on the floor of a rented garage, the ramen noodles, the panic attacks she talked him through, the code she debugged while he slept, flashed between them. "Dignity," Scarlett repeated softly. "You wouldn't know dignity if it bit you, Malcolm. You think you built this alone. You truly believe your own press release." "I am the press release," Malcolm replied coldly. "Your Honor," Tucker interjected, checking his phone. 10 minutes, that's all we ask. If the evidence isn't here by then, you can sign whatever you want." Judge Carter looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11:45 a.m. He wanted lunch. He wanted a cigarette. But he saw something in Scarlett Ingram's eyes, a glint of steel that reminded him of a soldier fixing a bayonet. 10 minutes, Carter grunted, slamming his gavel. "But if you're wasting my time, Mr. Quincy, I will hold you in contempt." As the room broke into a low roar of conversation, Malcolm stood and buttoned his jacket. He walked past Scarlett, close enough that she could smell the sandalwood of his cologne. "It's over, Scar," he whispered. "Stop fighting. You were always terrible at the end game." Scarlett didn't flinch. She watched him walk toward Una, who greeted him with a possessive hand on his arm. "He's wrong," Scarlett whispered to herself, a cold resolve settling over her heart. "We haven't even started the end game." The recess was a blur of activity. But inside Scarlett's mind, time was spooling backward. The sterile hallway of the courthouse faded, replaced by the smell of soldering iron and stale pizza in a cramped garage in Palo Alto, 22 years ago. They hadn't been Malcolm Carroll and Scarlett Ingram, billionaires then. They were just Mal and Scar, two dropouts with a vision too big for their bank accounts. Scarlett remembered the night the Ether prototype finally worked. It was 3 a.m. Rain was hammering against the corrugated metal roof of their workspace. Malcolm was passed out on a beanbag chair, exhausted from 3 days of pitching to venture capitalists who laughed in his face. Scarlett was at the workstation, eyes burning, fueled by cheap energy drinks. The code was messy. Malcolm was a brilliant visionary. He could see the destination, but he lacked the patience for the journey. His algorithms were full of holes, dead ends, and logic loops. Scarlett was the fixer. She was the one who wove the threads together, optimizing the kernel, streamlining the data processing. She remembered typing the final command. The screen blinked and the simulation ran. Smooth. Flawless. It was alive. "Mal," she had whispered, shaking him awake. "Mal, wake up. I fixed it." He had stumbled over, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When he saw the screen, his face transformed. That charisma, that electric energy that drew people to him, lit up the room. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "We're going to be rich, Scar. We're going to change the world." He had kissed her then, a desperate, hungry kiss. "You and me against the world, babe. 50-50ths, partners forever." But as the years passed, partners became founder and wife. The shift was subtle at first. When Wired magazine came for the first big cover story, Malcolm suggested Scarlett sit it out. "They want a singular face, babe. The lone genius narrative sells better. It's just marketing. You know the truth." She had agreed. She trusted him. She focused on the operations, the HR, the culture, and eventually, their daughter, Gemma. Gemma. Scarlett checked her phone. A text from Gemma, who was away at university in London, trying to escape the fallout of the divorce. "Thinking of you, Mum. Don't let him bully you. Use the nuclear option if you have to." Gemma knew. Gemma had been the one to catch Malcolm first. It was 3 years ago, the family dinner that turned into a massacre. Gemma, then 19, had thrown a phone across the table. It wasn't Una Cole back then. It was a PR consultant named Jessica. "How could you?" Gemma had screamed. "Mum built this life for you." Malcolm hadn't even denied it. He had looked at Scarlett with a weary sort of pity. "People grow apart, Scarlett. I've evolved. You're comfortable. I need brilliance. I need fire." That was the knife. The twisted deepest. Not the infidelity, but the intellectual dismissal. He had convinced himself that Scarlett was just a passenger on his rocket ship. Scarlett shook her head, clearing the memory. She looked down the hallway. Still no Underwood. Her sister, Gemma Ingram, named after their grandmother, causing endless confusion with her daughter, hurried over with 2 cups of lukewarm coffee. This Gemma, Scarlett's younger sister, was a firecracker, a contrast to Scarlett's stoicism. "Any sign of the mystery man?" Gemma asked, handing over the coffee. "Not yet. Tucker is sweating through his shirt. Malcolm looks like he's already planning his victory party," Gemma spat, glaring down the hall where Malcolm was laughing with a group of reporters. "God, I hate him. I hate that I used to think he was charming." "He is charming," Scarlett said quietly. "That's the danger. He makes you believe that his son is the only light in the universe, and when he turns away, you freeze." "Well, bring on the Ice Age," Gemma said. "What exactly is Underwood bringing? You've been so secretive." Scarlett took a sip of the bitter coffee. "Validation, Gem. He's bringing the truth." Just then, the elevator doors at the end of the corridor dinged open. A man stepped out. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a librarian who had gotten lost in a noir film. Underwood was short, balding, and wore a trench coat that was arguably too warm for the season. He clutched a battered leather briefcase to his chest with both arms. Walking beside him, however, was someone Scarlett hadn't seen in 2 decades, Raphael Hartwell. He was old now, leaning heavily on a cane, his skin like crumpled parchment, but his eyes were sharp. Raphael had been a notary public in Palo Alto, operating out of a strip mall next to a laundromat. He was the cheapest notary they could find back in the day. Tucker Quincy saw them and practically sprinted down the hall. "Is that it?" Tucker asked, pointing to the briefcase. Underwood nodded, breathless. "The original. Carbon copy and the wet ink master." "And Mr. Hartwell?" Scarlett asked, approaching them. The old man smiled, revealing dentures that were slightly too white. "Hello, Mrs. Carroll. Or is it Miss Ingram again? I remember you. You were the one who paid in quarters." "Mr. Hartwell," Scarlett said, taking his shaking hand. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Underwood here is very persuasive," Raphael wheezed. and I don't like bullies. Never have. Your husband, ex-husband. He was a loud one, even back then. We have 2 minutes, Tucker said, checking his watch. This changes the strategy. We aren't negotiating anymore. We're dropping a bomb. Scarlett looked at the battered briefcase. Inside lay a piece of paper that Malcolm had dismissed as a sentimental souvenir. A joke, a relic of a time when they had nothing to lose. He had forgotten that in the eyes of the law, a contract is a contract, regardless of whether it was signed in a boardroom or a garage. "Let's go," Scarlett said. She felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. The lion is waiting to eat. Time to pull his teeth, Gemma muttered, following them back towards the courtroom doors. The courtroom had settled back into a hush when Scarlett's team re-entered. Judge Carter was already on the bench, pen hovering over the divorce decree. "Mr. Quincy," Carter said, looking over his glasses, "you cut it close. I hope this evidence is worth the wait." Malcolm turned in his chair, a bored expression on his face. When he saw the disheveled man with the briefcase and the ancient man with the cane, his brow furrowed slightly. He didn't recognize Raphael Hartwell. Why would he? Malcolm only remembered people who could do something for him now. Tucker Quincy walked to the center of the room. His demeanor had changed. The slouch was gone. He stood straight, radiating a dangerous kind of energy. "Your Honor," Tucker began, his voice projecting clearly, "the defense has moved for summary judgment based on the premise that no prenuptial agreement exists, and that Carroll Tech constitutes separate property acquired by Mr. Carroll's sole efforts, with Miss Ingram merely a beneficiary of his success." "We've been over this, Counselor," Diane Sterling sighed, standing up. "There is no prenup. They married young and poor. There was nothing to protect." "Correction," Tucker said, slicing the air with his hand. "They married young and ambitious. And while there was no money to protect, there was intellectual property. There was intent." Tucker nodded to Underwood, who stepped forward and placed the briefcase on the plaintiff's table. The clicks of the latches opening echoed like gunshots in the quiet room. Tucker pulled out a document. It was old, the paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, and it lacked the heavy bonded weight of legal stationery. It looked like standard printer paper from the early 2000s. "Your Honor, I present to the court Exhibit Z," Tucker said. "A partnership agreement and prenuptial contract, signed and notarized 3 days before the marriage of Malcolm Carroll and Scarlett Ingram." Malcolm let out a loud, incredulous laugh. "What is this? A napkin I signed at a bar? This is ridiculous." "Mr. Carroll, please restrain yourself," Judge Carter warned, though he looked intrigued. "Approach the bench." Tucker walked up and handed the document to the judge. He also handed a copy to Diane Sterling. Diane took the paper, her eyes scanning it quickly. Her smirk faltered. Then it vanished. She looked closer, bringing the paper up to her face. She looked back at Malcolm, her face draining of color. "What?" Malcolm whispered, leaning over. "What is it?" "This document," Tucker addressed the room, "explicitly states that all intellectual property, code, algorithms, and business ventures created by either party, individually or jointly, from the date of signing, are to be considered joint works and community property, with a 50/50th ownership split in perpetuity. It specifically names the Ether Project." "That's impossible," Malcolm snapped, standing up. "I never signed that. It's a forgery." "It is signed by you, Mr. Carroll," Tucker said calmly, "and it is notarized by Mr. Raphael Hartwell, who is present in the court today to attest to the authenticity of the signature and the state of mind of both parties at the time of signing." Judge Carter looked at the document, then at the old man sitting in the back, then at Malcolm. "The signature matches the exemplars on file, Mr. Carroll. It's identical to the one on your marriage license." "I don't remember this," Malcolm shouted, his composure cracking. "It's a trick." Tucker turned to face Malcolm directly. "You don't remember because you didn't think it mattered. You were 24. You were desperate for Scarlett's help to fix the code that was crashing your demo. She insisted on protection. You signed it because you thought the company would never be worth anything. You bet against yourself, Malcolm. And you bet against her. Scarlett watched Malcolm. She saw the gears turning in his head. He was scrolling through his memories, trying to find the moment he had handed away half his empire. It hit him. The garage, the rain, the deadline. Just sign it, Mal, so I know we're in this together. Otherwise I walk, and the code walks with me. He had signed it without reading the fine print, just to get her back to the keyboard. He had traded 50% of a $0 company for a night of coding. He hadn't realized that zero would eventually turn into 50 billion. This is archaic, Diane Sterling stammered, trying to regain control. It was signed under duress. It's 20 years old. It cannot supersede the corporate incorporation documents filed later. Actually, Judge Carter interrupted, reading the text. Clause 4.1 says, this agreement supersedes any future corporate structuring unless explicitly revoked in writing by both parties. Did you revoke it, Miss Ingram? No, Your Honor, Scarlett said, her voice ringing clear. I kept it in a safety deposit box, just in case. The atmosphere in the room shifted violently. The power dynamic, which had been tilted so heavily in Malcolm's favor for months, suddenly inverted. The spectators, the press, even the bailiff, sensed blood in the water. Malcolm looked at Una Cole. She was looking at him with wide, confused eyes. She didn't understand the legalese, but she understood the panic on his face. The billions were suddenly in jeopardy. The yacht, the private jet, the influence. It was all effectively frozen. Mr. Quincy, Judge Carter said, looking up with a newfound respect. This changes the complexion of the case entirely. If this document holds, we are not discussing a settlement. We are discussing the dissolution of a partnership. Exactly, Your Honor, Tucker said, and since Mr. Carroll has attempted to defraud my client by hiding assets and denying her ownership stake, we will also be moving for immediate forensic accounting of all Carroll Tech subsidiaries and piercing the corporate veil. Malcolm sank back into his chair. He felt like he had been punched in the gut. He looked across the aisle at Scarlett. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't smiling. She was simply looking at him with a profound, terrifying disappointment. She looked like a stranger. Or worse, she looked like the woman he had married, the one whose brilliance he had used and discarded. You can't do this, Malcolm hissed across the aisle, loud enough for the stenographer to catch. You'll destroy the stock price. You'll burn the company down. Scarlett leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. I built it, Malcolm, she said softly. I can burn it, or I can take it back. Judge Carter cleared his throat. Court is in recess until 2 p.m. to allow the defense to examine the evidence. But Mr. Carroll, I'd suggest you use this time to reconsider your position on charity. As the gavel banged, the room erupted into chaos. Reporters were shouting questions. Diane Sterling was frantically typing on her phone. But Malcolm didn't move. He stared at the yellowed piece of paper on the judge's bench, the ghost of his past come back to haunt him. The signature was unmistakable. It was the signature of a young man in love, a young man who needed help, a young man who had no idea that one day he would become the villain of his own story. Scarlett stood up, smoothed her jacket, and turned to Tucker. Buy Mr. Hartwell lunch, somewhere expensive. With pleasure, Tucker grinned. Scarlett walked out of the courtroom, head high. She had walked in a victim. She walked out a threat. And for the first time in years, she felt the thrill of the code running through her veins, the logic finally aligning, the bug finally identified. The system was about to crash, and she held the reboot key. The walk from courtroom 4B to the waiting black SUVs was usually a gauntlet Malcolm Carroll navigated with the grace of a seasoned politician. He was used to flashes, shouted questions, and the adoration of the tech press. Today, however, the atmosphere had curdled. The reporters weren't asking about the Ether 2.0 launch or his vision for the future of AI. They were shouting about Exhibit Z. "Mr. Carroll, is it true you signed away half the company in 2002? Malcolm, did you lie to the board about the ownership structure? Miss Ingram, are you taking over as CEO?" Malcolm's jaw worked furiously as his security detail shoved a path through the throng. Beside him, Una Cole looked like a deer caught in high beams. Her perfectly curated influencer facade was cracking. She clutched her Prada bag to her chest, flinching every time a microphone came too close. "Get in the car," Malcolm snarled, practically throwing her into the back seat of the Maybach before diving in himself. As the door slammed, shutting out the noise, the silence was suffocating. Malcolm ripped off his tie and threw it on the floor. "How?" he roared, turning to Diane Sterling, who had scrambled into the jump seat. "How did you miss a prenup? I pay your firm $3,000 an hour to know everything." "Malcolm, you told us there wasn't one," Diane said, her voice tight. "You swore under oath during discovery that no such document existed. If I had known—" "You should have known," Malcolm struck the leather armrest. "That old bat, Hartwell. I thought he was dead. I thought the papers were lost in the flood of 05. Scarlett. She kept it. 20 years. Una spoke up, her voice trembling. "Malcolm, if she gets half, what does that mean for the penthouse? For the brand deal?" Malcolm turned to her, his eyes cold. For the first time, he didn't see the vibrant, youthful muse who made him feel relevant. He saw a liability, a distraction. "Shut up, Una. Not now." Una recoiled, tears welling up. "You said she was nothing. You said she was just a housewife who got lucky." "She was," Malcolm yelled, rubbing his face. "She was supposed to be." Meanwhile, on the courthouse steps, the scene was different. Scarlett Ingram stood not behind a wall of security, but flanked by Tucker Quincy and her sister, Gemma. She didn't hide. She stopped, looked directly into the camera of a CNBC crew, and smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile of a predator who had just reminded the jungle of her presence. "Miss Ingram, are you planning to liquidate your share of Carroll Tech?" a reporter shouted. Scarlett leaned into the mic. "Carroll Tech was built on a promise of transparency and innovation. I intend to ensure it returns to those values. I'm not here to liquidate. I'm here to audit." The quote hit the wires instantly. The audit. Back in Tucker's cluttered office, the adrenaline was beginning to fade, replaced by a grim reality. Tucker was pacing, eating a stale bagel. "Okay, the shock and awe worked," Tucker said, crumbs falling onto his lapel. "But Malcolm is a cornered animal now. He's going to come out swinging. He'll appeal the validity of the document. He'll attack Hartwell's competency. He'll claim you forged it." "Let him try," Scarlett said, sitting on the edge of the desk. "Hartwell is sound, and the ink analysis will date the document correctly." "It's not just the legal battle, Scar," Gemma warned, scrolling through Twitter on her phone. "Look at the bots. They're already spinning up. Gold Digger, Vindictive X. She wants to destroy an American icon. Malcolm's PR machine is weaponizing the fanboys." Scarlett took the phone. The vitriol was sharp, but it felt distant. "They can call me whatever they want. They can't change the code." "We need to move fast on the forensic accounting," Tucker said. "We need to get inside the servers before he starts deleting things. We need a court order for immediate access to the source code repository." "He won't give it up," Scarlett said. "The Ether algorithm is his holy grail. He'd rather burn the building down." "Then we bring in the heavy artillery," Tucker said. "I know a guy. Ex-SEC, now private sector. He eats encrypted ledgers for breakfast." "Who?" "Damian Carter." Scarlett froze. "Carter? Any relation to the judge?" Tucker grimaced. "Estranged son. Hates his father. Hates the system. But he's the best forensic accountant in the city. If there's $1 hidden in the Cayman Islands, or a line of code stolen from a grad student, Damian will find it. It's risky, though. If the judge finds out, he recuses himself, Scarlett said, and we get a new judge who might not be as sympathetic to a 20-year-old piece of paper. It's a gamble, Gemma agreed. Scarlett looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere in one of those glass towers, Malcolm was plotting her destruction. He had the money, the influence, and the ruthlessness. But she had the truth. "Call Damien," Scarlett said. "If we're going to war, we need a mercenary." Across town, Malcolm was making his own calls. He sat in his darkened office, the glow of the monitors illuminating his face. Diane Sterling had been dismissed. Standing before him was a man in a bespoke navy suit, holding a tumbler of scotch. "You're in a mess, Mal," the man said smoothly. "I didn't bring you here for commentary, Underwood," Malcolm snapped. The man chuckled. This wasn't the Underwood who had delivered the briefcase to Scarlett. This was his cousin, a fixer who played on the darker side of the street. "You want the problem to go away? It's going to cost you. The prenup is real. I had my guys look at the copy your lawyer sent over. It's ironclad." "Nothing is ironclad," Malcolm hissed. "Find me dirt on the notary. Find me dirt on Scarlett. I want her credibility shredded. I want her to be too afraid to walk into that courtroom again." "And the code?" the fixer asked. "She claims she wrote half of it." Malcolm hesitated. His eyes darted to the server room door. "She wrote patches, early stuff. It's been rewritten 1,000 times." "But the core kernel?" Malcolm didn't answer. "Right," the fixer said, finishing his drink. "So we need to make sure the forensic team never sees the version history. That's going to be expensive and illegal." "Just do it," Malcolm said. "I built this world. I'm not letting a ghost take it from me." Damien Carter was nothing like his father. Where Judge Philip Carter was a man of oak paneling and tradition, Damien was chrome and chaos. He operated out of a loft in Tribeca that looked more like a server farm than an office. Banks of monitors hummed, displaying cascading streams of data. When Scarlett walked in, Damien didn't even turn around. "You're late. The court order for the data mirror went through 10 minutes ago. I'm already in." Scarlett stepped up to the desk. "You move fast." Damien spun his chair around. He was younger than she expected, perhaps mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes that looked like they hadn't blinked in days. "I don't like waiting, Miss Ingram, and I don't like bullies. Your husband has terrible firewall hygiene, by the way. For a tech genius, his security protocols are surprisingly arrogant." "He assumes no one would dare attack him," Scarlett said. "Everyone attacks everyone," Damien muttered, turning back to the screens. "Okay, let's look at the financials first. It's the classic shell game. Carroll Tech pays licensing fees to a holding company in Ireland, which pays consulting fees to a shell in Bermuda, which buys real estate in your husband's name. I've found about $40 million in assets he failed to disclose during discovery. That's perjury. Right there." Tucker, who was leaning against a rack of servers, whistled. "That gives us leverage, but we need the IP. We need to prove joint authorship." "Working on it," Damien said. "He's tried to scrub the Git history, deleted the commit logs from 2001 to 2005. Amateur move. He wiped the metadata, but didn't overwrite the physical sectors on the backup drives. I'm reconstructing the ghost data now." Scarlett watched the code scroll by. It was like reading a diary she hadn't opened in 20 years. She recognized the syntax, the variable naming conventions. Run _ether _v1, 2, refactor _neural _net _Scarlett _ed. "Stop," Scarlett said, pointing at the screen. "There." Damien paused the scroll. "Line 4055. "That's the stabilizing loop," Scarlett whispered. "The recursive function that stops the AI from hallucinating. He called it the Carroll constant in the patent filings." Let's look at the author tag, Damien said, typing a command. The screen flickered, peeling back the layers of digital paint Malcolm had applied over the years. Underneath the Carroll Tech admin tag, the original author ID appeared, S_Ingram_002. Got him? Damien said, a grim smile spreading across his face. He didn't just steal the code, he copy-pasted it. He didn't even understand how to rewrite it, so he just wrapped it in a new container and slapped his name on it. If you pull this block of code out, the whole Ether platform crashes. Scarlett felt a mix of vindication and sorrow. He told the world he was the architect, but he was just the landlord. "This is the smoking gun," Tucker said, rubbing his hands together. "We prove this in court, and the sole genius narrative dies. The valuation tanks, sure, but your ownership is undeniable." "Wait," Damien said, his brow furrowing. "There's something else. Something active." "What do you mean?" Scarlett asked. "There's a subroutine running in the background of the current live build. It's not part of the original architecture. It's a kill switch." "A kill switch?" Scarlett leaned in. "It's tied to a biometric trigger. Malcolm's heartbeat, maybe? Or a daily check-in? If he doesn't authorize it every 24 hours, the system degrades. It introduces latency, corrupts data. He built a dead man's switch." He knew, Scarlett realized. He knew that if he ever lost control, he wanted to take it all with him. He'd rather destroy the company than let someone else run it. "He's escalating," Damien said. "Look at the logs. He initiated a scorched earth protocol 2 hours ago. He's moving the core IP to a private server in Zurich. If that transfer completes, the US courts can't touch it. Can you stop it?" Tucker asked. "I can try to jam the transfer," Damien said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "But he has a dedicated fiber line. I need an encryption key to halt the packet flow." Scarlett closed her eyes, thinking back. Malcolm was predictable in his arrogance. He never changed his passwords because he thought he was too smart to be hacked. But for the root access, the one key that controlled everything, he would use something sentimental. Something he thought only he'd cherished. "Try garage_rain_1999, Scarlett said softly. Damien looked at her. "Seriously?" "Try it." Damien typed it in. Access denied. "Try ether_genesis_arn, Tucker suggested. Access denied. Scarlett thought harder. What did Malcolm value above all else? Not her, not Gemma. Not even the money. He valued his own myth. "But try I_am_the_architect, Scarlett said, her voice dripping with irony. Damien typed I_am_the_architect. The screen flashed green. Access granted. Transfer paused. The room went silent. "He really is that of a narcissist," Damien said, shaking his head. "We have control. I'm locking him out of the admin console." Scarlett stared at the screen. She had her hand on the throat of the beast. For years, Malcolm had controlled her life, her narrative, her finances. Now, with a few keystrokes, she could shut him down. "Do it," she said. Damien hit enter. At the Carroll Tech headquarters, 50 floors up, the lights in Malcolm's office flickered. His monitor went black, then displayed a single line of text. "System lockdown. Joint authorization required." Malcolm screamed, sweeping his desk clear of monitors and awards. The crash of glass echoed down the hallway, terrifying the assistants. He grabbed his phone. "Get me Underwood," he roared. "Now! And get me the file on Gemma Ingram." The counterattack began at dawn. It wasn't a legal motion. It was a character assassination. Scarlett woke up to her phone vibrating itself off the nightstand. It was Gemma. "Don't look at the news," Gemma said, her voice panicked. "Just don't." Scarlett sat up, heart pounding. "What did he do?" "He leaked your medical records from 2004, the postpartum depression, the therapy sessions after the miscarriage. He's spinning it as psychological instability. The headlines are, They're saying you were mentally unfit to be part of the company, that the partnership was a delusion of a sick woman that he indulged out of pity. Scarlett felt the blood drain from her face. Those were her darkest moments. Moments Malcolm had sworn to protect. He had held her hand while she cried, told her it was okay to be broken. Now, he was selling those shards to the highest bidder. She opened her laptop. The New York Post cover was a grainy photo of her, looking disheveled, leaving a therapist's office 20 years ago. Headline, "The Madness of Queen Scarlett. Did mental health crisis force Carroll to take control?" "He's a monster," Scarlett whispered. She went to the living room of the safe house Tucker had arranged. Tucker was already there, pacing. "This is below the belt, even for him," Tucker said. "We can sue for defamation, invasion of privacy." "That will take years," Scarlett said, her voice hollow. "He's trying to break me now. He wants me to settle just to stop the bleeding." "There's more," Tucker said gently. "He's gone after Raphael Hartwell. They found a DUI from 1998. They're claiming Hartwell was an alcoholic who would notarize anything for a bottle of scotch. They're filing a motion to have his license retroactively revoked, which would invalidate the prenup." Scarlett sank onto the sofa. It was a perfectly executed blitzkrieg. He was dismantling her support system piece by piece. "We need to respond," Tucker said. "We need to show the forensic data. Show that he is the fraud." "No," Scarlett said, standing up. The initial shock was hardening into a cold, diamond-hard rage. "He wants a mud fight. He wants me to defend my sanity. If I deny it, I look defensive. If I ignore it, I look guilty." "So what do? "We change the battlefield," Scarlett said. "He attacked me as a mother and a wife. I'm going to attack him as a CEO. Damien locked him out of the system, right? Yes, but Malcolm has a team of hackers trying to brute force their way back in. They'll get through eventually. We don't need to keep them out forever," Scarlett said. "We just need to make a public statement that the shareholders can't ignore. Malcolm is launching Ether 2.0 today at noon, isn't he? The big keynote?" "Yes, it's live-streamed to millions. The stock price is hinging on it." "Get me into that live stream," Scarlett said. Tucker blinked. "You want to crash the keynote?" "I co-own the IP," Scarlett said. "I have administrative access. Can Damien patch me into the main feed?" Tucker grinned, a slow, shark-like smile. "He can hijack the Jumbotron in Times Square if you want. The keynote screen will be enough." At the Javits Center, the atmosphere was electric. 3,000 developers, investors, and journalists waited in the dark. A massive holographic display hovered over the stage. Malcolm Carroll walked out to thunderous applause. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed, but he turned on the charm. He wore a black turtleneck, channeling the ghosts of tech giants past. "Today," Malcolm boomed, his voice amplified by the stadium speakers, "we don't just step into the future. We write it. Ether 2.0 isn't just an update. It is the evolution of consciousness." He paced the stage, the hologram swirling behind him. "There have been distractions lately," Malcolm said, pausing for effect. "Attempts to rewrite our history, to drag us back into the past. But true visionaries look forward. They don't let the weight of lesser minds hold them down." Backstage, Una Cole watched from the wings. She looked nervous. She had seen the text messages on Malcolm's phone, the threats to Gemma, the payments to the shady investigators. She was beginning to realize that the queen position Malcolm promised her came with a target on its back. "And now," Malcolm shouted, raising his hands, "I give you Ether." He pointed to the massive screen. The screen flickered. The sleek Ether logo appeared, then distorted. The crowd murmured. Static cut across the image. The audio screeched. Then the logo dissolved. In its place, lines of code began to scroll. Green text on a black background. It was the original source code. The crowd went silent. Developers in the audience leaned forward. They recognized the elegance, the vintage structure. Then a video window opened in the center of the giant screen. It wasn't Malcolm. It was Scarlett. She was sitting in Damien's loft, looking calm, composed, and utterly authoritative. She wore no makeup to hide her tiredness. She looked real. "Hello, Malcolm!" Scarlett's voice boomed through the auditorium, echoing off the rafters. Malcolm froze on stage. He looked tiny against the towering image of his wife. "Cut the feed!" he screamed into his headset. "Cut it now!" "They can't," Scarlett said from the screen, "because you don't control the system anymore. You never really did." The audience gasped. Phones were out, recording everything. "For 20 years, I let you tell the story," Scarlett continued, addressing the silent crowd. "I let you erase me, because I thought we were building something for our family. But you broke the compact. You attacked my mental health to hide your own technical incompetence." On the screen, the code highlighted a specific section, the Carroll constant. Next to it, Damien displayed the forensic timestamp and the author tag, S_Ingram_002. "This is the core of Ether," Scarlett said. "I wrote it in 1999 while Malcolm was sleeping. Without this loop, the AI collapses. Malcolm has been patching it for 2 decades, but he never understood how it worked. That's why your updates are buggy. That's why the system lags." Malcolm was frantic, waving at the sound booth. "Turn it off! I'll fire everyone." "You can't fire the owner," Scarlett said. "To the shareholders, I am not here to destroy Carroll Tech. I am here to debug it. Effective immediately, I am exercising my rights under the 2002 partnership agreement to freeze all asset transfers and initiate a leadership review." She leaned into the camera. "Malcolm, you wanted a divorce? You got one. But you don't get custody of the brain." The screen went black. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then a single person started clapping. Then another. It was the engineers, the coders, the people who knew what real code looked like. Malcolm stood alone on the stage, the spotlight harsh and unforgiving. He looked out at the sea of faces and saw his reflection in their eyes, not as a god, but as a fraud. In the wings, Una Cole quietly turned around, walked to the exit, and called an Uber. But as Scarlett sat back in the loft, trembling with the aftershocks of what she had just done, Damien's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and his face went pale. "Who is it?" Scarlett asked. "It's my father," Damien said. "The judge." "Put it on speaker," Tucker ordered. Damien pressed the button. "Damien," Judge Carter's voice was icy, "you've had your fun, but you just embarrassed a very powerful man. And you've compromised my courtroom. I'm issuing a bench warrant for your arrest for cyber intrusion and corporate espionage. And Miss Ingram? Tell her she just lost her leverage. I'm declaring the prenup inadmissible due to proven fraud by the notary. The police are on their way." The line went dead. Scarlett looked at Tucker. He got to the judge. "Malcolm didn't just play dirty," Tucker said, grabbing his coat. "He bought the referee. We need to run." The escape to Bushwick was silent and tense. Tucker maneuvered the Volvo through the shadows of Brooklyn, finally parking at a dilapidated warehouse owned by a friend of Gemma's. It was a dead zone. No Wi-Fi, no digital footprint. Inside, Damien set up a command center on a stack of pallets. The glow of his laptop illuminated the grim faces of the group. "The warrant is for a felony," Damien said, typing rapidly. "My father isn't bluffing, but I found out why." "Money?" Scarlett asked. "Leverage," Damien corrected. He turned the screen around. 6 months ago, a shell company called Apex Holdings began paying $50,000 a month to a clinic in Switzerland. It's for my brother, Leo. He's in rehab. My dad was going to lose the house trying to pay for it. Malcolm bought his son's sobriety, Gemma whispered, disgusted. And now he's holding it hostage, Scarlett said. If the judge rules against him, Leo gets kicked out. Scarlett's burner phone buzzed. It was Una Cole. He's panicked, Una's voice was tight. "He's shredding everything. But he's keeping one drive. He calls it the insurance policy. He's meeting someone at the Brooklyn Army terminal at midnight. He said he's going to liquidate the problem." "It's the original source code," Scarlett realized. "He's going to destroy it, so I can't prove ownership." "We have to stop him," Tucker said. "But if we show up, the police will be waiting." "Not if we bring the one person the police can't touch," Scarlett said, checking the charge on her taser. "We're going to the terminal." The wind off the East River was biting. Scarlett, Tucker, and Damien crouched behind a shipping container, watching the solitary figure of Malcolm Carroll standing by the water's edge. A black sedan pulled up, and Judge Philip Carter stepped out, looking aged and broken. "You're late," Malcolm snapped, holding a silver hard drive over the dark water. "I signed the warrant," the judge yelled. "Leave Leo out of this. I need her found, Philip. The stock is tanking. The board is revolting. I need Scarlett in cuffs tonight, or the payments stop." "Dad!" Damien stepped out from the shadows. The judge froze. "Damien?" "Don't do it," Damien said, walking toward them. "I know about Leo. We can help him, but not like this." "It's too late," the judge whispered. "No," Scarlett said, stepping into the light. "It's never too late." Malcolm spun around, eyes wild. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" He swung his arm back to throw the drive into the river. "No!" Judge Carter lunged. The two men collided, grappling on the wet concrete. The hard drive skittered across the pier. Scarlett dove for it. Malcolm kicked the judge away and scrambled after her. He was fueled by pure narcissistic rage. He grabbed Scarlett's ankle, dragging her away from the drive. "It's mine!" he screamed, pinning her down. "I built this! I made you!" "You didn't make me!" Scarlett said, reaching into her pocket. "I made you!" She jammed the taser into his ribs and pulled the trigger. Malcolm convulsed and collapsed, groaning on the pavement. Scarlett scrambled up, grabbing the hard drive just as sirens flooded the pier. Tucker stepped forward, holding his phone. "FBI," he announced. "They've been listening to the whole thing." Agents swarmed the area. As they cuffed Malcolm, he looked at Scarlett with utter confusion. He still didn't understand how he lost. Damien knelt beside his father. "I'm sorry, Dad," Damien said softly. "I know," the judge wept. "I'm so sorry." 3 months later. The view from the boardroom of Ingram Carroll Systems was clear. Scarlett sat at the head of the table, her new board of directors around her. "Malcolm's plea deal is 10 years, Tucker reported, now the chief legal officer, and the judge accepted disbarment. He's focusing on Leo's recovery." "And the code?" Scarlett asked. "Stable," Damien said from the other end of the table. "We purged the ghost protocols. Ether is running clean." Scarlett nodded. She picked up a pen, a simple ballpoint, and signed the final document in front of her, the divorce decree. "Meeting adjourned," she said. She and Damien walked out to the elevator. The portrait of Malcolm in the lobby was gone, replaced by a digital display of raw code. Una Cole was waiting by the door, holding a box of personal items. "I'm going back to Ohio," Una said. "Nursing school. Thank you, Scarlett, for not destroying me." "Good luck, Una," Scarlett said sincerely. Outside, the city was bright. Scarlett took a deep breath. She didn't call for a limo. She hailed a yellow cab. "Where to?" Damien asked, sliding in next to her. "Palo Alto." Scarlett smiled, a spark of creation in her eyes. "I have an idea for a new project, and I need a partner who actually knows how to code." Damien smiled back. "I'm in." The billionaire's wife was gone. The architect was back. Scarlett Ingram's victory wasn't just about reclaiming her company. It was about reclaiming her voice. Malcolm Carroll learned that you can steal credit, but you can't steal genius. In the end, the truth, like good code, always compiles. If you loved this story of justice and resilience, please like, share, and subscribe. What would you have done in Scarlett's position? Let us know in the comments.